Age of Empires, a series that has taken me from my high-pitched squealing youth to my moderately low-pitched squealing adulthood, a series that has taught us how the pinnacle of human civilization across the ages boils down to one sound repeated over and over. Whoa. In almost a month to the day, Age of Empires 4 will come bursting into our Steam libraries. And sexual euphemisms aside, it's shaping up to be in a much better state than it was during some of the earliest testing I did almost 2 full years ago. In this video today, we're going to take a dive into the most recent beta stress test that was hosted this last weekend. I'll be showing off gameplay from one of my battles during this weekend's festivities just to act as, something to look at while I talk. And if this is the first time on my channel, or your first time on my channel, the way I like to do things is upfront the knowledge within the video so you don't need to wait around. So with that being said, let me give you a quick summary of my impressions of Age of Empires 4's beta stress test. Now let me start out by saying that the game has not changed from the core gameplay of Age of Empires 2, and you might think that that's a bad thing, but it's not. Age of Empires, for those of unaware, has grown to become an international competitive powerhouse. There are still over 1 million players online monthly, well, according to the creative director at least. The online competitive realm is even sponsored by Red Bull, having their Red Bull Wololo 5 this last weekend with a prize pool of $100,000. So needless to say, there's already a vested interest in keeping the core gameplay the same. This makes jumping into the game extremely accessible in an era that wants to reimagine everything and add a ton of complexity to it. With that being said though, don't mistake Age of Empires 4 as one note. It is deliciously diverse in its unit choices and the strategies allotted to you via the civilization you choose to lead into battle. We'll briefly go into each starting culture in the next section, but each one delivers a whole different aesthetic to your faction. It's similar to previous iterations of the game, but it just feels so much sharper in Age of Empires 4. There are a lot of really awesome improvements to the siege equipment and walls in the game, allowing you to build out any base into a sprawling Helm's Deep, fighting off everything the enemy can throw against you. And I played against the AI for a lot of my battles until I got my feet wet, and I was slogging through 90-minute to 2-hour games, which didn't feel boring or stalled out at any time. In fact, I hardly noticed the time had passed. When I played against players, it was obviously much different, but it goes a long way to say that both the AI and human players felt very fun and engaging just because of the enjoyment of watching your cavalry charge into a large line of foot soldiers or your English bowmen sniping out artillery pieces with flaming arrows. I can't stress how awesome it felt to hear a trebuchet hurl a massive boulder from a screen away, tearing down walls and buildings alike. I had an absolute blast, and I am extremely excited for the release come October 28th. Now, there is some bad to the game, but it's also easily addressable. I had a lot of issues with AI pathfinding around walls and gatehouses, some quality of life things that a lot of the modern RTSs just have baked into it, and some other little tweaks here and there, which I'll save for later with some concrete examples. If you'd like at any point, please feel free to jump to any of the chapters listed in the timelines in the description. But that's your quick summary and my impressions of the game so far. Please keep in mind, guys, the game is still in beta. There's still plenty that can change before the release later next month, so take this all with a grain of salt. So if that's all you wanted to know, you're free to shut the video down. But before you go, please don't forget to like, comment, and/or subscribe if you're enjoying the content. I'll be doing a lot of Age of Empires 4 once the game goes live, and I can't wait to dive back into it. But for those that want to get into the nitty-gritty, let's dive in on my first impressions of Age of Empires 4. So to start us out, I'm going to do a real quick crash course on the 8 civilizations you get access to in Age of Empires 4. Now, during the beta, we only had access to the Chinese, the Abbasids, the English, and the Holy Roman Empire. But outside of some of the obvious things, like obviously like the aesthetic, like I was saying, that will change from civilization to civilization, you get access to, of course, unique units, but you get more than you have in, say, Age of Empires 2. In addition to that, each one has this own cool custom faction mechanic. For example, the English get bonuses to all of their keeps, their towers, their watchtowers, and they can produce all of their units from the keeps. Or the Rus, for example, they replace their mill with a hunting lodge, and they have this bounty point system. So everyone has some sort of way that makes their faction different and unique, and it helps them either gain resources in different ways, or they can use it in some way, shape, or form that is, again, different from the other factions. And of course, you get, like I said, the unique units. So taking a look at the Chinese, you get the Imperial Official, the Fire Lancer, and the Nest of Bees. Nest of Bees was destructive to massed infantry. It just completely obliterates them. You really have to use the unit formations to your advantage as best you can when you're playing Age of Empires, especially if you are dealing with stuff like the nest of bees, which is going to destroy massed infantry. You have to spread out, use those unit formations. It's actually a lot of fun, and I really enjoy it. But here are the Chinese units at a glance. And if you jump over to the website, you scroll up, it'll also tell you those unique faction mechanics in a quick little summary, 2-3 paragraph breakdown. So if you do want to check that out, head on over to the website, and it'll show you how they play on the actual campaign or faction, or I'm sorry, battle map. Then the Delhi Sultanate gets scholars, war elephants, tower war elephants, and some factions obviously are better in the earlier ages than the later, or the later than the earlier. And the Delhi Sultanate would be an example of one that really takes a long time to get going, but once it does, it takes off. War elephants and tower war elephants are just so strong. Moving into the English too, you get the longbowmen, which can deploy these really cool stakes into the ground that can prevent cavalry charges, which is obviously the hard counter to them. They get the man-at-arms, which has access to at age 1, then the villager, which is pretty interesting because they actually can pop a bow out and start shooting with that bow, which is unique to them. Now the man-at-arms too, one thing that Age of Empires 2 didn't have, right? You progress through the ages, and then your older units would become obsolete. The nice thing is you can upgrade all of your units at one go by just simply pressing a button as you progress through the ages, so the man-at-arms in age 1 is still viable in the Imperial Age. Moving into the Mongols, we get the Khan and the Monjadai. Again, just as you expect for Mongols, it's going to be very cavalry centered, which is really strong in the beginning portions of the game. But as people get access to polearms and spearmen and counters to cavalry, it's really more of a hit and run type tactic. Moving into the French too, we get the Royal Knight, the Arbalists, then the Cannon. Again, different ways that you can play the game. And you can also see there's a difference in the architecture. It's more of a high Gothic style architecture for the French than it is for the English. So if you think you're playing the French or the English, it might look very similar. It will not. I promise you that. We get the Abbasid dynasty, giving us camel archers, imams. We get the Holy Roman Empire, which gives us prelates and Landsknecht, which is these sweet two-handed swords that just do tons of damage. And again, too, you can see the architecture here for the Holy Roman Empire is different than it would be for England and France. Moving lastly here into the Rus, we get the warrior monks, which give these kind of AoE buffs to everyone around them. They can also pick up relics. All religious units are the only ones that can pick up relics, but the warrior monks are nifty here that they're on a horse, so they're quite mobile and can pick those relics up and move them quickly around the battlefield. Also horse archers and then Streltsy. So again, this is just a quick glance. There are more units and things within each faction, so don't kind of think like, oh man, that's all they get access to. No, there are other things that are just not included. But when we take a look at the actual battles themselves, you'll see that as we play around that there's more units included here. But let's go ahead now and jump into the battle and give you more of my impressions of the game as a whole. Okay, so here we have the actual battle. I've just jumped to a arbitrary point, and again, this is just going to be some background visuals as I speak, because this is all just unscripted, kind of going off the cuff here. And for the most part, if there's anything big I want to highlight, I will fade it onto the screen and talk about it for a bit and then fade it away. So you won't miss anything. This is just kind of give you some visual bonerage. I don't even know what I'm saying. But either way, Age of Empires 4 plays, like I said before, very similarly to Age of Empires 2. It has a lot of the conventions that we've come to appreciate and love in this series, and they're done up in a way better fashion than I'd say Age of Empires 3. I personally was not a fan of 3. I couldn't really get into it. It just changed the formula too much, and I think there's a reason that Age of Empires 2 has lasted that test of time and people still play it. Now, when you're jumping into Age of Empires 4, you'll notice that everything should feel, for the most part, right at home. I skipped the tutorial. I started to play it. I'm like, okay, I know how to move a camera. So I was able to really pick the game up just as fast as because all that muscle memory from 2 just kicked in immediately. But what I do really like about 4, and please ignore this technical stress testing that's just floating around the map constantly, is that they've done a lot of little improvements to the way you navigate around the actual UI using the keyboard. You do not move around the map using WASD. You'll, for the most part, do that by either moving to the edges of the screen or holding down the middle mouse button. But if you notice whenever you see me like build something or something like that with a villager, in fact, you know what, we'll fade that onto the screen. You can see that everything is bound to WASD. So it makes memorizing quick keys a little bit faster. If you've ever played StarCraft or Warcraft, even semi-competitively, even online, it can be very cumbersome to try and remember a lot of those things over time because they're different, right? Every single faction, for the most part, has some sort of different building hotkey or whatever it is. I find that I really enjoy the ability to just kind of quickly swap between buildings or giving orders using WASD or FNR or ZXC for the different formations. So I just have a way to quickly navigate each and every unit. I think that was a really big boon for me that I didn't even realize was something I needed in an RTS style like this, because this is an old school style RTS, right? It plays just like the aforementioned games and Age of Empires 2. So it kind of gets that nice streamlining with that, and I'm a really big fan of it. Now, moving into some of the other portions of the game, I like the way that the walls are constructed and building additional defensive towers on top of them. Again, stuff that's already existed in the past, nothing game breaking, but it was just kind of refreshing to see it in the game once more. And I did also really enjoy how you kind of navigate your resource intake. What's nice is you get your 4 resources on the lower left. You can find out how many villagers are on each one. As you can see, 5, 10, 11, 15, 20, however many it is for however many you've got on there. Everything just has a really nice, quick and easy layout in the lower left. And I think that makes for a lot less, you know, dirtiness on the actual UI. It's really quick to navigate. But if you hover over each one of those resources, it'll tell you how much you're making a minute. So it really gives you an idea of, okay, I can take some people off of this one and onto this resource because I want to have all of them at X gain per minute. So you can really get a nice advantage out of that, and I really enjoy it. Now, one of the biggest things I noticed from 2 to 4 would be the way that the formation kind of standardly works when it comes to combat. It's awesome that your cavalry will immediately file in the front, followed by your infantry, followed by your archers, and then any religious units that would do some healing behind them. And you can kind of change how that works by pressing ZX and C, whatever you so wish. But it was a really cool little convention that I was not ready for, that made combat really awesome. It was fun to see my cavalry immediately charge into the enemy. And I realized towards like the 2nd or 3rd game that I'm better off actually separating my cavalry into their own force, because it would kind of get things a little too spread out and they wouldn't be able to support properly. And I've also realized that you can cycle charge in this game, much like you can in Total War with your cav, to really good advantage. The cavalry will they'll drop their lance or whatever their kind of quote unquote pole arm is, and they'll charge the enemy as fast as they can to essentially get a charge bonus. And if you repeatedly do that, you get a little bit more advantage out of it. And I did notice too that there is, again, like I said, a really hard rock, paper, scissors in this game. The archers are going to do a ton of damage to anything as long as they're unimpeded, right? As long as nothing can get into their ranks quickly. Well, cavalry is going to do a really good job at that. And while cavalry does a really good job against hitting infantry, they're really great at shutting down shutting down archers and siege equipment. Siege equipment in this game is so devastating, especially if you're the Chinese. Using that nest of bees, they can just completely decimate, especially the English that focus on really strong infantry, especially the longbowmen. And using cavalry in its own isolated group to kind of quickly hunt down siege equipment or really jump into archers is key, because your infantry line can hold off against a massed cavalry charge, but they really can't hold off against mass archery or mass siege equipment. So you kind of have to use things to the best of its ability. And that's a thing I never ever thought I'd do with Age of Empires. Maybe it's because I had a tiny pubescent brain and now I have a tiny adult brain, so take it as it is. But I really enjoy that layering into the combat of Age of Empires without making it too complex. I understood quickly what I was doing wrong, why my armies were getting decimated, and I made the adjustment. It wasn't like trying to learn how to micro and macro like I've had to do in games like Total War Warhammer, where if my micro's not on par, then competitively I'm just trash. So it's really nice to see that. And a lot of the time I spent in the beta test was actually against the AI learning how to play the game. So if you're someone who just doesn't care about the competitive portion of this game, which obviously is very big, you're still going to have a lot of fun against the AI because they actually do a really good job of layering their offense and defense against you, of using those different types of units and attacking you in really fun and creative ways. You'll definitely get better than them because that's just kind of the nature of fighting the AI, but if you're just someone who wants to just fight against the computer, you're going to have a challenging time. I was only playing intermediate on the very first game in a 2v2, and my partner and I, who was also was a human, it's weird to say that out loud, was also a human player, he just got smashed to bits. He's like, this is my first game, I'm having a rough run of it right now. And if it wasn't for him getting focused, I don't think I would have been able to get off the ground to actually mount any kind of offense or defense against the AI. So there was a lot of fun to be had in the combat. Now, when it comes to the actual economy of the game too, I found it was really easy to navigate because of those UI context tips in that lower left telling me which resources were low, how much I was producing per resource, and being able to navigate around that quickly. I enjoyed too the fact that all the units and things that I created, again, just like in previous iterations, were just kind of upgraded throughout the ages in a very cohesive way. You know, you want to do more you want to be able to produce better food production, well, you're going to go over to the mill and you'll do all of your upgrades through there. Same thing with wood, same thing with mining, so on and so forth. And two, like I've mentioned previously, it was nice that the units that I created across the ages had the chance to simply upgrade by pressing a button. They'd upgrade across the map. And some factions give you different upgrades, right? Like for example, the Men-at-Arms for the English, they get their standard upgrade as I think they reach age 4, the Imperial Age, but they also get one that says like full armor or full plate armor, something like that. And it makes them even more durable. So you get the standard upgrade plus the faction upgrade, which was really cool. And I really appreciated that ability to not have my army go to waste. Or, you know, I think there's always some sort of impetus to, well, I'm going to turtle up until I get to maybe this age and then I'm going to produce an army. It made it viable for me to produce an army at age 1 as well as it did at age 4. So I didn't feel like I was wasting any time, which was really great. So as a whole, I really enjoyed my experience playing the game. I mean, there are very few things that I have issue with, which we'll go over in the next section. And I know I've kind of covered a lot of stuff here right now, but I enjoy the fact that, you know, I've got 3 objectives. I either can destroy the enemy, all of its landmarks, and landmarks include the landmarks to progress your age, as well as their town center. So you have to destroy everything. Or build a wonder, you know, a wonder victory, or secure 2 sacred sites. And once you secure those 2 sacred sites, you have 10 minutes to basically win the game. If they don't take the sites back within 10 minutes, you win. So I had a blast. And I didn't think I would. I was like, okay, well, the alpha test that I tried wasn't that awesome. I'm not even going to cover it. It's whatever. And I decided to do this beta, and I'm really glad I did, because I'm really now excited for the launch in October. The things I'm about to address as the issues in the game, like I've said before, are easily addressable with patches, because they're not like, oh, you know, I had a problem with the color palette, you know, like, or I had a problem with something that's core to the game that can't just be changed with a patch. A lot of people have said, hey, it looks too cartoony. To me, it honestly looks exactly like Age of Empires 2, just with higher, better poly sprites and 3D images, right? Like you look at Age of Empires 2, it's a bright color palette and it's very cartoony for the most part. It's not grimdark in any way, shape, or form. And 4 follows that same suit. I mean, it honestly just feels like almost like Age of Empires 2 remastered, but with a better slap of paint on it. Like it's a very solid, enjoyable game. Let's jump now into some of the things that I did have a problem with. And like I said, this section is pretty minimal. The biggest things that I had a problem with are really relegated to the AI, and not the AI as in, hey, you know, the AI is super easy to beat and I just rolled it over. More relegated to the way that the AI responds to certain things. If you have a building that's beat up, or a wall, a series of walls that are beat up, if you have your villager go and repair that, they will only repair one portion of the wall. So the annoying thing is you kind of have to micromanage something as simple as repairing. So that is kind of annoying to me. I wish that there was an ability to right click or hold down the repair button and it will auto repair for you. That would be a lot better. So, okay, hey, this villager, I'm going to take 3 or 4 villagers. I'm going to leave them in one area. I'm going to move my siege equipment to that one area, and they will always repair the siege equipment that comes in range, or they'll always repair the walls because they're right next to it. Something like that, I think, would go a long way, and that's just a simple quality of life improvement. Another quality of life improvement would be auto exploring. So your scout that you start with, a lot of games have this now. You press a button and they go auto explore everywhere. I would appreciate it if I could just do that. Obviously the AI does it naturally because it has perfect reaction, right? So it can constantly be clicking around the map. You cannot do that in Age of Empires 4. You have to, you know, you building out your city. Okay, now I can click my scout to a different location. Just basically clicking the 4 corners on the map, which brings me to my next issue. There's no queued up orders. I can't make, like, I can't hold shift and right click a whole bunch of times to make a series of waypoints for my unit or single unit to move through. They'll just simply go to the last one you clicked. So I do think that queuing up orders would be huge. Maybe there's some sort of design choice and reason they didn't do that. But like I said, if they didn't do an auto explore, even have the ability to click my scout, hold down shift, right click a bunch of times all over the map and have him just go everywhere, that would make it way easier for me to just kind of explore the map and not have to spend as much micro on the tedium, stuff like that. One thing too I did notice is when you are under attack, it'll say, you know, forces under attack or ally under attack. You can't click it to quickly jump to which forces or which ally or what is under attack. You have to, you know, go to the unit you think is under attack. And if you have multiple units, like I had at one time, or multiple groups, then I wasn't sure which one. I would just quickly press them all to jump to them. So being able to quickly jump to whatever ally or whatever instance is triggering that unit or group or whatever under attack, I think would be pretty clutch. And lastly, probably one of the biggest things that I had an issue with in one of my battles, and the one that actually you guys are watching, the AI just completely destroyed my opponent, my partner. So it was really me against 2 AI factions that were just constantly attacking me. So I had to use the choke points and walls and gatehouses to my advantage. You can move your archers onto the walls. It's a really cool little system. It really made having this kind of Helm's Deep thing very fun and interesting, and I really enjoyed it. But I will say that once they would use any kind of infantry units to kind of burn my gates down or battering rams, I would sally out with my knights or with my infantry to kind of destroy those things. Well, it's very hectic around the gatehouse. The AI will sometimes push the units onto the wall. Sometimes they won't even let the gates close and the AI will come through the gates. It gets really kind of crazy around the gatehouse. And that's probably my biggest gripe with the game as is. And that is, like I said, so easily addressable with a patch that it just can be just done away with fast. But I really enjoyed having those battles, even though the AI around the gatehouse was super cumbersome for me. So those are the big things that I had a lot of issues with. I guess the true last one would be knowing a little bit more. Again, I did say I skipped the tutorial, so this is on me. Let me make that clear. There is some things that I wish they had kind of made a little more obvious. Like if you hold a sacred site, you generate gold per minute. Now that might be addressed in the tutorial, but it'd be interesting, or it'd be nice if it told you, like something you highlight, you hover your mouse over it and it says generating X gold per minute. It will definitely be in the total gold accrued per minute if you hover over that, but that's not broken out in any way, shape, or form. It just shows you. And the only way you'd know if that sacred site gave you gold is if you were just watching your units for a minute and you watch them getting gold for you watch the little gold ticker popping up over the sacred site every minute or so. So that's, I guess, the only other thing is getting better transparency there. But again, like I said before, that could have been helped if I just did the tutorial. But those are the things that I did not really enjoy about Age of Empires 4, or improvements that can be easily done or addressed via patches. And at that, it brings my video here to a close. I mean, I've covered pretty much everything I enjoyed about the game, and we did cover a lot of stuff. I feel that you're really going to get a better breadth of what you're enjoying and not enjoying once the game is fully out. I just want to give you my initial impressions of the beta as it is, because like I said, you can't do a full review, and I'm not even allowed to do a full review of a beta. I think it's kind of smutty when people do that. You're really not giving the game its best chance to shine. So we'll definitely do a full review come October 28th when we've got the game in its final iteration, or at least its launch iteration, and I'll be able to go into hopefully more details and show off more hard concrete examples. I was pretty limited in what I could show off as far as the ability to record this impressions video and show you guys, because we were limited in our time to play, and anyone was allowed to play. You just had to jump on Steam and go ahead and choose it. But I'm really excited for the game coming out here later next month. If you have any questions, things that I did not address, that you're really curious about the gameplay or mechanics and you just didn't see that in the video, or haven't heard from anyone, feel free to leave a comment below. Let me know any of the questions you might have, and I will answer them as best I can. Or I'll probably ask my friend who's been playing a ton more than me and give you some sort of a better answer. Who knows? But as always, guys, thank you so much for watching here today. Don't forget to comment, like, or subscribe. All that fun action. It helps me out a ton. But have a good one and take care.